It was a cold and quiet night in Geneva. The global communications array was half asleep, with only a few people working in the control room. The world had changed a lot over the past few decades. Wars had ended, nations had united, and people had turned their focus toward peace and exploration. The giant war fleets that once circled the Earth were now floating museums, reminders of darker times that humanity wanted to forget. But peace often makes people lazy, and comfort makes them blind to danger. On that silent night, as the stars shimmered above, something unusual broke through the endless radio static. Dr. Amelia Cross sat at her workstation, sipping cold coffee, her tired eyes staring at the signal monitor. She had been checking frequencies for months as part of a deep space observation project. It was supposed to be routine, boring even. The world had stopped worrying about threats long ago. Her work was more about science and curiosity than defense. But that night, the machine on her desk began to hum in a strange rhythm. The signal wasn't from any known satellite. The pattern was off, repeating every 13 seconds, faint but consistent. At first, she thought it was an error, maybe interference from a passing asteroid or old communication satellite. Still, something about the sound made her uneasy. She leaned closer, adjusted the filters, and ran the sequence again. The result made her heart skip a beat. It was an SOS signal. A cry for help, but not in any modern format. It was old, coded in a way no one used anymore. She frowned, thinking it might be a relic transmission, maybe bouncing from space debris. But when she analyzed the pulse structure, her fingers froze above the keyboard. The pattern was identical to the distress code used by the Erebus expedition. That name had not been spoken aloud in years. The Erebus was humanity's most ambitious mission. A giant colony ship launched 15 years ago toward the Kepler frontier. Thousands of people had gone aboard, dreaming of building a new home among the stars. But soon after it crossed beyond Mars' orbit, all contact was lost. Search missions had failed. People mourned and moved on, believing the Erebus was destroyed. Its name became a ghost in history, a symbol of lost hope. Amelia's hands trembled as she decrypted the faint message. The SOS was broken, full of static and distortion, but a few words were clear. "Erebus, attacked. Help us." Her pulse raced. She tried enhancing the final part of the transmission, and when the last sequence appeared, her stomach twisted. The message ended with one chilling line. "They're coming. Help us." The room suddenly felt colder. She sat frozen, her mind spinning. If this was real, then something terrible had happened to the Erebus. But who were they? No one on Earth had any idea what existed beyond the outer colonies. The thought that something, or someone, was coming sent a wave of fear through her. She called her supervisor, but he brushed it off at first. "It's probably an echo," he said. "Old data bouncing off a dead probe." But Amelia wasn't convinced. The timing, the structure, the energy, everything about it felt deliberate. She argued until he agreed to run a deeper scan. Hours passed. The sun began to rise over the Alps, painting the control room in gold, but Amelia didn't even notice. The data came back, and it confirmed her worst fear. The signal was new. It wasn't an old recording. It had been transmitted less than 24 hours ago, and its origin point was moving, slowly but steadily, toward Earth's orbit. When the report reached the top levels of the Global Communications Directorate, silence fell across the organization. Within hours, encrypted channels lit up around the world. The message was sent to military and intelligence networks, and for the first time in decades, classified defense systems were accessed again. Amelia was summoned to an emergency meeting at the European Defense Center. She had never been there before, and as she walked into the vast underground chamber, she saw faces full of tension. Generals, scientists, and politicians all gathered around a massive holographic display, showing the faint signal path. The Erebus's last known coordinates blinked red, and a dotted line connected it to the origin of the SOS. An older general leaned forward. "Are you absolutely sure this is authentic, Doctor?" he asked. Amelia nodded nervously. "I checked it 15 times. The encryption matches the Erebus's launch registry, and the timestamp shows it's recent." A murmur filled the room. Some thought it was impossible. Others whispered that it could mean only one thing. The Erebus was still out there, and it had found something. Amelia played the message for them, and the words echoed through the hall. "They're coming. Help us." A heavy silence followed. No one wanted to say what everyone was thinking, that this could be an alien threat. The director of the Global Defense Council finally spoke. "We've been at peace for 30 years. We dismantled our planetary defenses for a reason. Are we ready to open that door again?" No one answered. It was a question that cut deep. Humanity had sworn never to return to war. The great machines that once protected Earth were locked away, deactivated in deep storage. People had wanted to believe that danger would never come again. But the SOS message had shattered that illusion in a single night. Amelia sat quietly, her hands clasped together. She wasn't a soldier, just a scientist, yet she felt the weight of the moment. If her discovery was true, it could change everything. One of the officers turned to her. "Doctor, could this be a trick? Maybe someone trying to provoke a reaction?" She shook her head. "The source is too far away and the encryption is human but old. No one on Earth could fake it." Another general stood up. "Then we must assume the worst." His words made the air heavy. "If they're coming, we need to know who they are and what happened to the Erebus." That night, Amelia went back to her apartment, but she couldn't sleep. Her mind replayed the words again and again. She opened her laptop and connected to the public space monitoring system, zooming in on the area beyond Mars. The signal was still there, faint but steady, like a heartbeat in the dark. It was moving closer. For the first time, she felt a strange mix of fear and awe. If something could reach the Erebus and send a message after 15 years, it meant that humanity was not alone. The question was whether the other side was friend or foe. Across the world, news of the strange signal began to leak. Reporters mentioned an unidentified space anomaly, and social media buzzed with rumors. Some said it was just a broken satellite. Others claimed it was proof of alien life. Governments stayed silent, but behind closed doors, preparations had already begun. Old command stations were reactivated. Dormant satellites powered up. Hidden storage facilities containing massive war machines were quietly inspected. Humanity, long asleep in peace, began to stir again. Amelia returned to the communication center the next morning, greeted by flashing red alerts. More fragments of the SOS had been received overnight. She sat down quickly, decoding each new piece, and what she found made her chest tighten. The fragments described an attack, something that consumed ships, absorbed energy, and left nothing behind. The Erebus's captain had recorded his final words. "They're not machines. They're alive. We can't stop them." The message cut off there. Amelia stared at the screen, realizing what it meant. Whatever had found the Erebus was beyond anything humanity had ever faced. By the end of the day, the world's leaders had gathered for an emergency broadcast. Every major channel went silent as the Global Defense Council announced that an unknown signal had been received from deep space. They didn't share the details, but their tone said enough. The world held its breath. People who had lived their entire lives without fear suddenly felt small and vulnerable again. Somewhere in the depths of the ocean, massive steel doors began to unlock, and the hum of ancient power slowly returned. In that moment, as the night sky stretched endlessly above, Dr. Amelia Cross stood alone outside the observatory, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, a lost ship was calling for help. Somewhere, something was coming. The wind was cold and the silence felt heavier than before. She closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "What have we awakened?" The answer, she knew, would soon come from the darkness beyond the stars. The signal from the Erebus changed everything. Within days, the world that had been sleeping in peace began to wake up, not with joy, but with fear. The message spread across secret channels like fire in dry grass. Only a handful of people knew the full truth. But even the little that was leaked made nations restless. Everyone wanted answers. Who had sent the SOS? What were they warning about, and why now, after 15 long years of silence? Governments tried to keep it quiet, but whispers moved faster than any official announcement. Scientists, military officers, and intelligence experts across continents were called back from retirement. Meetings were held in deep underground bunkers where cell phones were forbidden, and every word was recorded. Humanity's calm surface started to crack. Dr. Amelia Cross found herself in the middle of something she had never imagined. 1 week ago, she was just another researcher working night shifts, studying signals from deep space. Now she was being escorted by armed guards into rooms full of the most powerful people on Earth. Her discovery had forced open doors that had been locked for decades. The Global Defense Council, which had not met in full assembly for 30 years, was active again. Its members came from every major nation, all dressed in somber black suits, their eyes filled with worry. The holographic map in the center of the room showed the faint red trail of the SOS moving slowly toward the inner solar system. It was faint like the heartbeat of a dying star, but it was enough to shake the world. A heavy voice filled the chamber. "We need to decide what we're dealing with," said General Marcus Rane, the head of Earth's orbital defense decades ago. His face was lined with scars from the last war, the kind people thought would be the last in human history. "Is this a distress call or a warning?" Amelia took a deep breath. "Both," she said quietly. "The Erebus crew was alive when they sent it. They said they were under attack, and then they said they're coming." The room went silent. No one dared to speak for a few seconds. Then a diplomat from Asia leaned forward. "You're suggesting this could be an external force? Alien?" Amelia hesitated but nodded. "I can't confirm who or what attacked them. But whatever it was, it's moving toward us." The council erupted into arguments. Some said it was impossible, that no intelligent life had ever been confirmed beyond Earth. Others argued that it was naive to think humanity was alone in a universe of billions of stars. The debates went in circles, but underneath the talking, fear was growing. Finally, the president of the Global Council stood. "We cannot afford to ignore this. For years we have enjoyed peace. We turned off our defense systems and dismantled our fleets. But if this message is true, we may be facing something none of us are ready for." His words echoed across the chamber. That was the moment humanity began to change direction. Again. Far away, in hidden bases buried beneath ice and rock, old terminals began to light up. Locked vaults opened for the first time in decades. Files marked Top Secret, Project Titan, and Sleeping Giants Initiative were brought out from digital archives. Those files contained the blueprints and control protocols for humanity's most powerful weapons, massive autonomous warships known as the Giants. They were built during the cold expansion wars, when humanity first reached the stars and found that not every world wanted visitors. After the peace accord, they were shut down, sealed in hidden hangars around the world and on the moon. Their engines hadn't burned in years. But now, for the first time since their deactivation, engineers and scientists were gathering around them again. Amelia didn't know the full scale of what was happening, but she could feel it. The air in Geneva was heavy with tension. Military transports flew low at night, carrying classified equipment. The media asked questions that no one answered. She was kept under strict protection, moved from one secure facility to another as if she were the key to a secret that could decide the fate of the world. Every day she was questioned by different groups. Some wanted to know how she found the signal. Others wanted her to prove it wasn't a trick. But the more data came in, the harder it became to deny the truth. The signal wasn't fading, it was getting stronger. Something was coming closer. In Washington, an emergency meeting was held between the leaders of the old space powers. For the first time in many years, they spoke not as rivals, but as frightened humans. "If this is real," one of them said, "then the peace we built means nothing if we can't defend ourselves." Another replied, "To defend ourselves, we'll have to break every treaty we signed." The room fell silent again. Breaking the global peace accord meant activating weapons of mass destruction that had been sealed for decades. It meant awakening the sleeping giants. But slowly, one by one, the leaders agreed. They would rather be hated for breaking peace than destroyed for keeping it. Amelia sat in a private observation room one evening, staring at the holographic replay of the Erebus transmission. She had listened to it so many times that she knew every static burst, every pause. But there was one small detail she had missed before. A low background hum, rhythmic, mechanical. She ran it through sound filters, enhancing it, and the result made her heart beat faster. It wasn't random noise. It was a pulse, a beacon like sonar. Something had been tracking the Erebus. She quickly sent her analysis to the council, and within hours, the data reached every major intelligence agency on Earth. The response was immediate. The pulse was not human in origin. That night, the order was given. The Global Defense Network would be partially reactivated. Energy stations across the world powered up the dormant relay systems that connected to the orbital defense grid. The once forgotten satellites began to come alive, blinking faintly against the darkness of space. The engineers called it awakening the bones of the past. On the ocean floors, deep under ice-covered regions, massive doors opened and water flooded into huge chambers. Inside them rested the old war giants, colossal metal beasts that hadn't moved in decades. Each one was a fortress, designed to protect humanity from extinction. And now, after years of silence, they were being prepared again. While the governments worked in secret, rumors spread among the public. Amateur astronomers noticed strange patterns in the sky, old satellites moving that shouldn't have. People began talking about the return of the Erebus, about alien contact, about hidden wars. Some were excited, others terrified. Conspiracy theories filled the news, but none of them came close to the truth. The truth was darker, heavier, and very real. Amelia was brought into a classified facility known as Vault 9. It was an ancient underground complex built during the old wars. She walked through long corridors filled with dust and silence until she reached a massive metal door. When it opened, she froze in awe. Inside stood the control chamber of one of the sleeping giants, the Aegis Prime. It was enormous, towering like a mountain of steel, its surface covered with armor and old battle scars. Lights flickered across its hull as engineers worked to restore its systems. "It's beautiful," Amelia whispered. One of the officers beside her nodded. "It's also dangerous." These ships were built when humanity still feared everything. But now, there are only hope. As days passed, more nations joined the secret alliance. Old enemies shared data, and scientists exchanged codes that had been locked away for decades. The world was preparing for something it could barely understand. Still, no one knew exactly what was coming. The signal from the Erebus kept repeating, growing clearer with each day, as if whoever sent it was trying to make sure humanity was listening. And then one morning, new data arrived. Another transmission, this time shorter and more desperate. "They're close," it said. "Don't let them follow." After that, silence. Panic spread through the council. If the attackers could follow the Erebus's path, they could find Earth. Amelia tried to calculate how much time they had left. "Weeks," she said. "Maybe days." The leaders looked at one another, their faces pale. "Then it's time," said General Rane. "Wake the giants." Orders were sent out across the world. Reactors that had been cold for 30 years began to hum. Massive hangars opened beneath the oceans, releasing bursts of bubbles as mechanical titans slowly rose toward the surface. Power grids flickered as enormous energy cores reactivated. Humanity's sleeping war giants were no longer silent. From her window in the command center, Amelia watched as a live feed showed the first awakening. The Aegis Prime emerging from the depths of the Pacific, water cascading off its gleaming armor. The ship's engines glowed like suns beneath the waves. It was both terrifying and magnificent. The world that had sworn never to fight again had just taken its first step back into the shadow of war. But this time it wasn't about greed or territory. It was about survival. As the days went by, Earth changed. The peace everyone had taken for granted was gone. Factories began producing weapons again. Orbital stations were refitted and soldiers were trained in silence. Amelia felt torn inside. She had never wanted this. She had studied the stars because she loved their mystery, not because she feared them. But now those same stars looked dangerous. Somewhere out there, something was moving toward Earth, something powerful enough to destroy the Erebus. Humanity had no idea what was coming, but one thing was clear. The giants were awake and the age of peace was over. The world had changed in just a few weeks. The signal from deep space had done what no leader or war ever could. It united humanity. Every nation, every defense agency, and every scientist now worked under one command. The air was filled with tension and fear, but also a strange sense of purpose. For years, humanity had been asleep, living under the comfort of peace, pretending the universe was harmless. But now the sound of that mysterious SOS had shattered that illusion. The world's greatest secret was no longer hidden. The sleeping war giants were waking up. Dr. Amelia Cross had been assigned to the Global Defense Corps, the organization responsible for reactivating the ancient weapons. She spent her days surrounded by scientists, engineers, and soldiers. It was strange for her. She was a researcher, not a soldier. But she had become a symbol of discovery, the one who had heard the first cry for help. Everyone respected her, yet she felt the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. Every time she closed her eyes, she could still hear that message from the Erebus. "They're coming. Help us." It echoed in her dreams like a warning she couldn't escape. Outside, the world's atmosphere was no longer peaceful. Across continents, massive hangars opened for the first time in decades. In the deserts of Africa, the Arctic ice fields, and beneath the oceans, The giants began to stir. Each of these machines was enormous, towering ships of metal older than most of the people alive. When they were first built, the world had feared them. Now they were humanity's only hope. Technicians and pilots worked day and night, replacing decayed parts, restoring their cores, and uploading new defense algorithms. The most powerful of them, Aegis Prime, stood in the middle of the Pacific Ocean like a sleeping god. Its steel armor gleamed under the sun and waves crashed against its hull. It hadn't moved in 30 years, but now its engines hummed softly, ready to rise again. General Marcus Rainey was in charge of the reactivation program. He was a man of few words, his face weathered by old wars. To him, the giants were like old soldiers. They needed purpose to live again. "These machines were built to protect us," he told Amelia as they stood in the observation deck overlooking Aegis Prime's activation. "When peace came, we buried them because we feared our own power. But peace without strength is just waiting for disaster." Amelia listened, but her heart was heavy. "What if we're waking up something worse than what's coming?" she asked softly. The general turned to her, his eyes cold but honest. "Then we fight, because if we don't, there won't be anything left to fear." News of the giants' awakening was still secret, but the signs were impossible to hide. The skies were filled with aircraft. The seas stirred with strange lights, and strange vibrations shook the earth as massive engines powered up underground. People began to sense that something was happening. Rumors filled the internet, talks of alien threats, of the Erebus returning, of old weapons being restored. Some were terrified, others proud. But the truth was stranger than any rumor. Humanity was preparing for a war it didn't even understand. In the central control room, Amelia and a team of scientists were working around the clock to analyze the mysterious signal. Every hour it grew stronger. The strange frequency now carried fragments of unknown patterns, almost like another language mixed with machine noise. Amelia noticed something odd. The pulse from the signal matched the power output of the Erebus's engines when it had launched 15 years ago. That meant the attackers had learned from the ship. They weren't just following, they were adapting. When she shared this discovery with General Rane, he called an emergency meeting with the Global Council. The conclusion was terrifying. Whatever was coming had intelligence, and it had been watching humanity for years. While the council debated, the giants fully awakened. Around the world, the ground shook as engines roared to life. One by one, the massive machines rose. Helios Vanguard from beneath the Sahara sands, Odin's Wrath from under the Norwegian fjords, and Aegis Prime from the depths of the Pacific. The awakening was not just mechanical, it felt almost alive. Engineers wept as they watched their creations breathe again, while soldiers saluted, their faces glowing in the red light of the reactors. For the first time in generations, Earth looked powerful again. Amelia was aboard the Aegis Prime when it made its first move. The ship trembled and the ocean exploded around it as its engines ignited. The sound was deafening, like thunder that rolled across the world. Everyone on the deck watched in awe as the massive warship rose from the sea, breaking through waves and mist. It was both beautiful and terrifying. "She's awake," one engineer whispered. Amelia looked out at the horizon, where the sun was setting behind the clouds, painting the sky blood red. "No," she whispered back. "We all are." But even as humanity prepared, the fear of the unknown grew deeper. The new signals from deep space revealed that the approaching force was enormous, something like a swarm. Hundreds of objects were moving together, almost like a living cloud of light. Some scientists believed they were machines. Others thought they were energy-based life forms. Either way, they were heading directly toward Earth's solar system. Amelia's heart sank when she calculated the trajectory. "They're coming faster than we expected," she said during the next briefing. The room fell silent as her words sank in. The countdown had begun. In response, Earth's entire defense network went active. Satellites that had been dormant for years were linked together to create a planetary shield grid. The moon bases were rearmed, and space stations once used for research became command centers. The giants took their positions, forming a ring around the planet, their cannons pointed toward the stars. The Aegis Prime was chosen as the flagship, commanded by General Rane himself. Amelia joined the crew as a communications expert. She was the only one who truly understood the alien signal. She wasn't a soldier, but she couldn't stay behind while the danger she discovered approached their home. Days turned into nights as the world prepared for contact. People across the globe watched the skies, unaware of how close danger had come. Inside the command ship, Amelia and the others barely slept. The alien signal had changed again. It wasn't just a warning anymore. It was trying to communicate. Strange rhythmic patterns filled the speakers, almost like a voice speaking through static. Amelia spent hours decoding it, her mind exhausted but determined. Finally, she managed to translate a fragment, and when she read it aloud, everyone in the room froze. The message said, "You took what was ours." No one understood what it meant. Did the Erebus crew find something that belonged to these beings? Was this revenge or something else? Amelia felt a chill crawl up her spine. Humanity had always reached into the unknown, taking what it didn't understand. Maybe this time the unknown had decided to reach back. The Aegis Prime's massive scanners locked onto the approaching swarm. Thousands of small energy readings filled the holographic screen. They were coming fast, burning through space like falling stars. General Rane stood tall on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the display. "Prepare all systems," he ordered. The crew responded in unison, their voices steady despite the fear in their hearts. Amelia watched as the fleet's communication systems synced across the network. The sleeping giants were now fully awake, their cores glowing like blue suns. For the first time in history, Earth's sky was filled with its own protectors again. The giants hovered in orbit, lined up like a wall of steel and light. Their names, once forgotten, were spoken again with pride and fear. Every person on Earth watched the news as live footage showed the glowing shapes of the giants above the clouds. Children pointed at the sky. Old veterans saluted from their porches. Humanity was ready to fight, not because it wanted war, but because it had no choice. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for, the first visual contact. Through the long-range sensors, the approaching swarm became visible. It wasn't like anything human eyes had ever seen. The objects were not ships, not in any shape humans could understand. They looked like living storms, shifting forms made of light and darkness, glowing veins pulsing with energy. They moved together, silent and graceful, but with terrifying speed. The room went completely silent as they appeared on screen. "They're here," whispered one of the operators. The tension on the bridge was unbearable. Amelia felt her breath stop as she looked at the incoming wave of unknown creatures. Somewhere deep inside, she still hoped it was a mistake, that maybe they came to talk, not destroy. But the sensors told another story. The swarm was charging its energy fields. It was an attack. General Rane raised his hand and gave the order humanity had feared for years. "Activate full defense grid." "Engage on my command." The giants roared to life. Their massive cannons glowed. Their shields hummed with power, and the space around Earth lit up like a second sun. Amelia could feel the vibrations through the floor as Aegis Prime prepared to fire. She stood near the communication console, staring at the holographic sky filled with enemy signals. For a brief moment, she saw something beautiful. Earth shining below, surrounded by its guardians, and then she thought of the message that started it all. "They're coming. Help us." Now she understood. The Erebus wasn't just asking for rescue, it was warning them. Whatever had destroyed the Erebus was now here. The giants were awake, humanity was ready, and the first battle for survival was about to begin. The stars no longer looked peaceful. They looked like a battlefield waiting to burn. The universe was no longer silent. The moment humanity's war giants powered up, the sky itself seemed to tremble. The alien swarm had entered the solar system, moving faster than anyone expected. On radar screens, the wave of light and darkness looked like a living storm. Every few seconds, new readings appeared. Hundreds, then thousands of energy forms rushing toward Earth's outer defenses. For weeks, humanity had prepared, but now the waiting was over. The sleeping giants had awakened, and war had finally come home. Dr. Amelia Cross stood on the command deck of Aegis Prime, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. The ship's massive windows showed the blackness of space sprinkled with star, and beyond that, faint flashes of light growing brighter every second. The alien swarm was close. Every alarm and sensor in the control room screamed warnings. Crew members ran between stations, shouting coordinates, confirming weapon locks, and adjusting shield frequencies. General Marcus Rane stood in the center of the chaos, calm as stone. His voice carried through the storm of noise. "Hold positions. Wait until they're within range." His tone was sharp, controlled. the voice of a man who had seen too many battles. For a few moments, time seemed to slow. The fleet of human giants floated in formation, enormous ships, their metal skins gleaming under the light of the distant sun. Aegis Prime, Helios Vanguard, Odin's Wrath, and 7 others formed a line between Mars and Earth, like a steel wall between humanity and extinction. Their engines pulsed with blue fire, their cannons charged and ready. On Earth, billions watched through live broadcasts, hearts frozen in fear and awe. Children clung to their parents as news anchors whispered, "They're here." The first contact came suddenly. Without warning, a beam of energy struck one of the smaller defense ships near Mars orbit. It didn't explode, it simply vanished. The energy had disintegrated it completely. No debris, no flame, just nothingness. Gasps filled the command deck. Amelia's breath caught as she stared at the empty spot on the holographic screen where the ship had been. "What kind of weapon does that?" she whispered. No one answered. The swarm didn't slow down. They were fast, unpredictable, and eerily silent. General Rane raised his hand. "All units," he said through the communication channel, "engage." The silence shattered. The giants unleashed their fury. Bright lances of plasma, electromagnetic torpedoes, and beams of raw energy shot through space. The darkness lit up like a thunderstorm of fire. The first wave of alien entities shattered under the assault, but instead of dying, they broke apart and multiplied, fragments turning into smaller creatures of light and metal. Amelia watched the impossible sight with wide eyes. "They divide," she whispered. "They're not machines. They're alive." The battle became chaos. The alien swarm moved like a single mind, twisting and coiling around the human ships. They attacked in silence without any visible weapons, only raw energy that tore through shields like paper. One of the giants, Titan's Cry, was surrounded and consumed in minutes, its massive hull melting under the alien storm. The screams of its crew echoed through the comms before fading into static. Amelia covered her ears, her heart breaking. These were people, scientists, engineers, soldiers. It's now gone in an instant. "Aegis Prime, hold formation," General Rane shouted. "Focus fire on the largest cluster." The main cannon of Aegis Prime glowed brighter than the sun. The energy core roared as it fired, sending a blinding beam through the swarm. The explosion was massive, a wave of light that tore through hundreds of alien entities at once. The bridge shook violently from the shockwave, but the moment of victory was brief. More of the creatures emerged from behind the light, reforming like a storm, rebuilding itself. Amelia's hands trembled as she worked at the communication console, scanning for any trace of human life beyond the battle. Her fingers froze when she caught a faint transmission, a weak distress signal coming from the far side of the swarm. She recognized the frequency instantly. "It's the Erebus." "They're still out there," she shouted. Everyone turned toward her. The idea sounded impossible. The Erebus had been lost for 15 years. But the signal was real, faint but steady. General Rane's eyes narrowed. "Can you trace it?" Amelia nodded. "Yes, but it's near the center of their formation." Rane didn't hesitate. "Then that's where we go." His decision shocked the crew. "Sir, that's suicide," one officer said. "We'll be surrounded." Rane looked at him with calm defiance. "If we don't find out what happened to Erebus, we'll never understand how to stop them." Then he turned to Amelia. "You're coming with me." Moments later, Aegis Prime broke formation. The massive ship tilted, engines roaring, and charged directly toward the heart of the alien swarm. The other ships covered its path, firing to clear the way. But the enemy closed in fast. Amelia gripped the rail as the ship trembled under repeated impacts. The lights flickered, alarms blared, and smoke filled the air. "Shields down to 60%, someone shouted. "Reactor output stable," another replied. General Rane's voice thundered above the noise. "Keep pushing forward." Through the front windows, the swarm looked endless, glowing shapes of liquid metal and fire swirling like a hurricane. The ship plunged through, firing continuously. Then in the distance, Amelia saw it, the silhouette of a broken ship floating in the chaos. It was the Erebus. Its hull was blackened and torn, pieces missing, but it was still there. "We found it," she whispered. The closer they got, the stranger things became. The Erebus wasn't just wreckage, it was alive. Strange metallic veins had grown over its surface, pulsing with light. The alien material had fused with the human ship, merging it into something half machine, half organic. "Oh my God," Amelia said softly. "They didn't just attack it. They used it. The creatures had taken the ship and turned it into one of their own. Suddenly, the Erebus sent out a blinding flash of light. The sensors went wild. "They're reacting to us!" shouted one technician. "It's drawing power from our weapon systems." Amelia quickly analyzed the readings. "They've learned how to feed on energy. The more we fight, the stronger they get." It was the worst possible discovery. Every shot fired, every beam of plasma only made the enemy evolve faster. "Then we changed the rules," General Rane said. He ordered all ships to switch to kinetic mode, solid projectile weapons that didn't release energy. The battle shifted. Bullets and missiles replaced beams of light. For the first time, the swarm slowed down. Amelia's mind raced. "They're reacting slower to non-energy impacts," she said. "That's their weakness." The fleet quickly adapted, and for a brief moment humanity had the upper hand again. Amelia watched as Aegis Prime's cannons tore through the infected remains of the Erebus. It was heartbreaking, destroying the ship that had once carried humanity's hope for the stars. But there was no choice. If the alien infection reached Earth, everything would end. The explosion lit up space like a second sun, scattering debris and vaporized metal across the void. For a moment there was silence. The swarm began to retreat, drifting backward into the shadows beyond Mars. Humanity had survived the first wave, but victory came at a terrible cost. 3 of the giants were gone, thousands of soldiers lost, and most of the fleet's weapons were damaged. On Aegis Prime, the crew sat in stunned silence, staring at the burning remains of the Erebus. Amelia felt tears on her cheeks. "They tried to warn us," she whispered. "They knew what was coming." General Rane placed a hand on her shoulder. "And now we do too." His voice was low, steady, but his eyes showed the weight of loss. Amelia nodded slowly. "They're not gone," she said. "That wasn't all of them." She looked out into the dark beyond Mars, where faint flashes of light still flickered, the remnants of the swarm, regrouping. "They'll come back, and next time they'll be stronger." Rane turned to his officers. "Then we'll be ready. Begin repairs. Tell Earth the truth. The first battle is over." The order echoed through the ship, and for the first time in weeks, people began to move without panic. The surviving giants returned to orbit, their engines glowing dimly against the black sky. Below them, Earth spun silently, blue, beautiful, fragile. Humanity had faced the unknown and survived, but only just. Amelia stood by the observation window long after the others had left. She watched the stars, remembering the voice from the SOS, desperate, afraid, human. Now she understood what they had felt, floating in the dark, waiting for help that came too late. She whispered softly, "We heard you." Somewhere beyond the stars, something was still moving. The war was not over. It had only just begun. But for now, Earth's defenders stood tall. The sleeping giants were awake, scarred but alive. And for the first time in history, humanity was united not by fear of each other, but by the will to survive the darkness that waited among the stars. The war was over, but the silence that followed felt heavier than any explosion. Space was quiet again, yet that silence carried the echoes of everything humanity had lost. The giants drifted in orbit like wounded beasts, their armor scorched, their engines dim. Below them, Earth was alive with light, but the people on the ground knew what it had cost to keep those lights shining. The first alien war had ended, but everyone knew deep down, this was not the end. It was only a pause. On the command deck of Aegis Prime, Amelia cross-stared at the stars. Her reflection in the glass looked older than she remembered, her eyes tired but filled with something new. Resolve. It had been 3 months since the last alien signature vanished beyond the solar frontier. Humanity had survived, but barely. 3 war giants were gone forever, thousands of lives lost and entire orbital stations destroyed. Still, for the first time in centuries, every nation had stood together. The old borders had dissolved in the face of extinction. For once, humanity had fought not for power or land, but for existence itself. Earth's skies were now guarded by the remaining war giants, Aegis Prime, Odin's Wrath, Helios Vanguard, and 2 others. They were no longer hidden weapons. They had become symbols of protection. People called them the Guardians. Children painted them in schools. Artists filled the streets with murals of the battle, humanity's unity rising from the fire of war. The fear of aliens had slowly turned into determination. Instead of building weapons, nations started working together on new defense systems and exploration programs. The world that had once feared its own strength was learning to control it wisely. General Marcus Rahn had become a legend, though he never wanted to be one. He refused parades, interviews, or medals. Instead, he spent his days aboard Aegis Prime overseeing reconstruction and training the next generation of defense officers. He often said, "Victory doesn't belong to those who fought. It belongs to those who survive and build again." His voice carried the weight of someone who had seen too much death to glorify it. Amelia often worked beside him, analyzing alien debris collected after the battle. The strange materials were still alive in a way, pulsing faintly, resisting study. "It's like they're sleeping," she said one day, looking at the glass containment field. Rain replied softly, "Then we'll make sure they never wake again." The Erebus wreckage had also been recovered. What remained of its core revealed horrifying truth. Before the final battle, the ship's AI had recorded everything. The aliens had not come by accident. They had followed human signals from deep space, drawn to electromagnetic energy like moths to flame. The Erebus colony had been their first contact, their first experiment. The message Amelia had received, and that desperate SOS, was not only a cry for help but also a warning. The Erebus survivors had used their last strength to send it before being consumed. That message had saved humanity, but it had also marked Earth's position in the cosmos. Somewhere out there, the enemy knew humans existed. Amelia's research led to new discoveries. The alien matter they recovered seemed to be part biological, part machine, built from elements not found in the periodic table. It responded to energy and sound, changing its form like liquid metal. It had memory, almost consciousness. Every test she ran made her uneasy. "We may have destroyed them," she told the Global Council, "but their technology is learning from us." Her warning stirred fear again, but also urgency. Scientists from all over the world joined her in building Project Dawn, a defensive system designed to protect the planet if the aliens ever returned. For the first time, the knowledge of war was being used not to destroy but to preserve. Meanwhile, life on Earth began to heal. The survivors of Erebus, the few who were rescued from the wreckage before it was destroyed, became heroes. They spoke of years trapped between worlds, hiding from alien patrols, surviving in the dark. Their faces were pale, eyes hollow, but they carried wisdom no one else had. "We saw their home," one survivor said in an interview. "It's not a planet. It's a moving hive, a world that drifts through space, feeding on others." Those words haunted Amelia at night. She would often look out at the stars and wonder when that hive would return. General Rane tried to give people hope. "We've awakened our strength," he told the council in his final address. "But strength without unity means nothing. If they come again, we must face them not as nations, but as one world." His speech was broadcast across the planet. Children repeated his words in schools. The world began to think beyond flags and borders. Slowly, Earth was changing, not through conquest but through understanding. Years passed. The memory of the war turned into history, but the giants remained awake. Their lights glowed faintly in orbit, maintained by automated systems and watched by new generations of engineers. Amelia continued her work, leading the Solar Defense Research Center. Her office overlooked the Pacific Ocean, and every evening she would stand by the window watching the sun dip below the horizon. Sometimes she imagined she could hear the faint hum of Aegis Prime above the clouds, like a guardian angel watching over them. One night, as she sat reviewing data from a deep space probe, something unusual appeared on her screen. A faint energy signature, distant, almost invisible. It matched the frequency of the alien swarm. Her heart skipped a beat. She ran the data 3 times, but it didn't change. They were still out there. She called General Rani immediately. His voice was calm, but she could hear the old steel returning. "Then it's time," he said. "We always knew they'd come back." Within days, the world's communication channels lit up again. The Global Council convened, the defense networks activated, and the sleeping giants prepared for another awakening. But this time it was different. Humanity was ready. The ships were repaired, the shields improved, the people united. The fear that once divided them had turned into strength. Amelia stood once again on the bridge of Aegis Prime. The same stars stretched before her, but now she felt no fear. "Do you think we can win again?" she asked quietly. General Rane looked at her with a small smile. "We already did," he said. We woke up. The second signal never came closer. The alien energy faded after a few days, as if retreating into the void. Some said it was only a ghost, an echo from the last battle. Others believed it was a warning, a reminder that the universe was watching. Either way, humanity didn't return to sleep. The fleets remained active, the sky constantly watched. Earth had changed forever. Months later, Amelia visited the memorial built on the cliffs of New Zealand overlooking the ocean. It was a vast monument made of silver and black stone, carved with the names of those lost in the war. Soldiers, engineers, scientists, and civilians. At the center stood a statue of a giant, one hand raised toward the stars, the other resting on the earth below. She stood there for hours, wind brushing her hair, the sound of waves below. She felt a deep calm. For all the pain, humanity had found something beautiful: unity. As she looked up at the night sky, the faint glimmer of Aegis Prime passed overhead. She smiled softly and whispered, "We didn't wake the giants to destroy. We woke them to remind us who we are." Her words drifted with the wind, carried out to the endless sea. Humanity had learned a lesson it had long forgotten, that true strength was not in weapons, but in the courage to stand together. In the years that followed, children grew up under peaceful skies, learning about the Great War not as a story of death, but as a story of rebirth. The name, the SOS that awoke humanity's sleeping war giants, became part of every textbook, every history lesson. People no longer feared the stars. Instead, they looked up with hope, knowing that if darkness ever returned, the light of unity would rise again. Somewhere in the vast silence of space, the remnants of the alien swarm drifted like dust, silent and broken. But deep within that silence, something still moved, slow, patient, waiting. And far away, the sensors of Aegis Prime flickered as if aware. The giants remained watchful, their hearts of metal beating softly, keeping guard over a world that had finally learned to be awake. Amelia Cross continued her work until her final days, guiding the next generation of scientists. Her last message to the Council was short but powerful. The greatest defense of humanity is not the strength of its machines. It is the unity of its heart. Her words became a creed for centuries to come. And so, humanity endured, stronger, wiser, and forever awake, with its sleeping war giants standing tall among the stars, ready to rise again whenever the call for help, the next SOS, echoed through the darkness of space.